Thanks.
Could preside over a Wall Street-related lawsuit as one of her first cases if she's sworn in as a Supreme Court justice.
For more on what Sotomayor's rulings could mean for corporate America, we're joined by the Wall Street Journal executive Washington editor Jerry Seib. This has got to be one of the more interesting days inside the Beltway, Jerry, I'm sure. But what is the focus here, and now what?
Well, first of all, I thought we'd be talking about North Korea today, but here we are talking about a judicial pick. No, this will be very interesting, and I would guess the odds that Judge Sotomayor is confirmed by the Senate are very high. Just look at the Democratic numbers and look at the desire of some Republican senators, I assume, not to vote against a Hispanic nominee for the Supreme Court, and you get the sense of the politics of it. But there is going to be an examination, and I think particularly of the New Haven, Connecticut case that Peter just mentioned, the question of racial preferences in general, and some regulatory cases that she's been involved in, including some with, for example, the EPA.
Well, Jerry, my eyes gravitated immediately towards sports. There were two decisions, one that's the president referenced concerning Major League Baseball, but also one concerning the National Football League, which I thought bore some resemblance to what we're looking at with the UAW right now. She voted that in order to accommodate the collective bargaining process, and I'm reading from her decision, certain concerted activity among and between labor and employers must be held to go beyond the reach of antitrust laws. Now, granted, the MLB and the NFL have kind of this special category outside of the public or private sector, but when you look at what is being given to the UAW, the United Auto Workers right now, related to what's happening with GM, she went with the union and always seems to have done that in the past. If somebody challenges, if one of the bondholders challenges what the UAW is getting through the government right now, might they refer back to this decision?
I think so, although on that one, and also in the Major League Baseball case, on that one she ruled the Major League owners could not hire replacement players, and that effectively ended the Major League Baseball strike and may have saved the Major League Baseball enterprise as we know it. In both cases, you don't know whether the ruling really says something about labor management relations or whether they are rulings that should be seen through this lens of sports in America, which have kind of a unique standing in American society and kind of have their own kind of jurisprudence in history. So I don't know whether to look at those as labor management cases or as sports cases, but you raise an interesting question.
And let's go back to the New York Stock Exchange decision that she made, which was in support of the New York Stock Exchange, saying it was a quasi-governmental type of entity and therefore should be exempt from certain kinds of regulation. Perhaps, who knows how she would have ruled, for example, on a day like today when all of the financial crisis that has sort of rolled out in front of us has changed the perspective of regulating these entities. But that's got to be some type of sort of confidence, I guess, that you might give to business people who were worried that she might be tougher than ever on businesses.
Yeah, and I think the record here is going to be interesting, and Peter referred to it as being hard to generalize about, and I think that's right. You know, we have other cases, one I've looked at regarding the EPA, in which she raised some doubts about whether the EPA has to do cost-benefit analysis when it issues its rules, and that's somewhat controversial and not favorable to the business community. So I think you're going to have a mixed bag, but because of where she comes from, the Second Circuit in New York, there's a long history here of a lot of cases that are of interest to the business community, and I think it's probably dangerous at this point until people really dive into the record, which is pretty thick, to generalize too much.
By the way, the times in which she's been overruled by the Supreme Court in the past, is that of significance? A couple of times overruled by an 8-0 unanimous decision.
Yeah, that's going to be brought up, and I think one of those was the Merrill Lynch case that Peter referred to, in which I think she was ruling in a way that was favorable to the business community, but the Supreme Court went the other direction. But one of the things that people look at, if you have an appeals court judge, is what is that appeals court judge's record with the Supreme Court? In other words, does the Supreme Court think that cases were handled correctly and that decisions were made according to the Constitution as the Supreme Court interprets it? And the ruling there is one of those that's going to be looked at. There aren't a whole lot of them, but there's several in which she's been overturned by the Supreme Court.
By the way, I've been getting a lot of emails saying she is not the first Hispanic Supreme Court justice. The first one was Benjamin Cardoso, although it should be mentioned Mr. Cardoso's family came from England and those areas. Originally his ancestors were from Portugal. But, you know, who cares? Frankly, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter.
That's one of the marginal debates we've been having in Washington all day today. Is it or isn't it the first Hispanic pick? It's the first Hispanic woman, though, that's for sure.
There you go. Who would be confirmed. All right, thank you very much.
Should be judged on the content of her character, not where she came from. Thanks a lot. Good to see you.